Hello everyone, and welcome to my final video on the Seeing Real Retrospective series. In my previous two videos, I talked about Do What Will Happen and Destroy Build Destroy, which were the two most successful live-action shows on Cartoon Network. However, there were many attempts by the network to make live-action a part of its regular programming, with almost all of them failing. The questions people have when looking back on this period is why did Cartoon Network want to go live action, and why did they fail so badly? During the 2000s, Cartoon Network's competitors, Nickelodeon and the Disney Channel, started to see a lot of success in their live action programming, with shows like Ned's Declassified, iCarly, Drake and Josh, Hannah Montana, and The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. Not only were these shows successful in getting millions of views and making the studios money, but these shows were also easier and cheaper to produce than animated shows, as an anime episode can take many months to produce. With hearing all of this, it makes sense for Cartoon Network to try to incorporate live action into their programming. But besides Do What Will Happen and Destroy Build Destroy, most of the shows will fail to gain any traction. Since I already talked about the previous two, let's quickly go over the rest of the shows to see why live action failed so hard for Cartoon Network. Out of Jimmy's Head was a live action sitcom that aired in 2007, and was Cartoon Network's first attempt at live action. The show stars Jimmy, who is an average kid that no one understands, going through the perils of middle school while having visions of cartoon characters in his head. The show is similar to Ned's Declassified in that the scenarios are over the top and that mostly takes place in a school setting. However, unlike Ned's Declassified, Out of Jimmy's Head has some major problems. First off, for a show that's supposed to be outlandish and cartoony, the writing and acting is pretty bland.
Who left a coat here? Whoa. Jimmy, check out this awesome tunnel. Jimmy? He's escaped.
It also doesn't help that the laugh track is played constantly, even though most of the time the so-called jokes weren't funny.
If we fold on this axis, we have two rectangles of equal size.
Another problem the show has is that a lot of the characters are unlikable. For example, Jimmy's friend, Craig, usually uses Jimmy to make himself look better, as well as Jimmy's father, who usually is disappointed by Jimmy and treats him badly. Also, the animated characters inside Jimmy's head, which is supposed to be the big selling point of the show, hardly show up most of the time, only appearing for a minute in a 22-minute episode. And when they do show up, it is very jarring since the animation is really bad. Overall, the show failed as a sitcom, with unfunny jokes, mediocre acting, unlikable characters, and bad animation. The show will only run for 20 episodes, and has become forgotten over time. Brainwash was basically a trivia game show, but it has a twist as it takes place on roller coasters. Basically, the host will find a random person and ask them trivia questions, with some running up to over $1,000. The questions range in difficulty, with some being as easy as what city is Aquaman from, to being difficult like how many volcanoes are in the state of Hawaii. While the show was nothing special, it was at least an innovative idea for a game show, and sometimes you could get a funny reaction like this.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Okay, repeat the last one! Repeat the last one, okay. That's my question! Holy! Oh my God!
Overall, if you're a fan of trivia, the show was actually pretty entertaining. In the early 2010s, ghost hunting shows were the rave. With the massive success of Ghost Hunters, many networks tried to make their own ghost hunting shows, and Cartoon Network was no exception with The Other Siders. The show was centered around 5 teenagers who go to haunted places to try to catch evidence of ghosts. Besides the fact that the team consists of teens, there's little difference from this show and the other shows that aired around the same time. You have the same green-colored night vision film, the same noises in the background, and the same supposed voices of ghosts.
If you're here, can you give us a sign?
While I will give the show credit for at least trying to be realistic instead of using cheap effects, it still doesn't excuse the show's lack of creativity, since there were a dozen other shows that did the exact same thing. Bobby Thompson is an actor known for his role as Stanley on That's So Raven. With his experience on that show, plus appearing in many commercials, Cartoon Network decided to give Bobby his own show called Bobby Says. Due to the fact that the show only lasted for 6 episodes and rarely aired, most of the series became lost with just one episode being found. However, with what I've read and saw of the show, it mainly focused on Bobby watching clips of people failing, so pretty much like America's Funniest Home Videos or Tosh.0. With Bobby Says trying to copy those two shows, and the fact that YouTube was starting to grow in popularity, which would have made watching fail videos much easier and with less ads, it isn't really a surprise that Bobby Says lasted for such a short time and was ultimately forgotten. Like I mentioned with ghost hunting shows earlier, survival shows were also a big trend in the early 2010s, thanks to the huge success of Survivor. Many networks also tried to make similar survival shows, and in Canada, one of them was Survive This, which Cartoon Network would pick up and try to air on their channel. The show was centered around 8 teens with little survival skills, trying to survive the deadly forest of Toronto. Basically, the show is like any other survival show, with drama and people having to get along. The show would receive criticism for being uncreative. Besides that though, the show will also see backlash for putting minors in dangerous situations. With those two things, the show will receive low ratings and eventually not be renewed. I think it's important for me to mention that Cartoon Network will also air a second survival show called Cold Drama Island. This show would do much better since it didn't harm anyone due to it being animated, and it was more funny and entertaining as well. Hole in the Wall was originally a game show in Japan, but will receive international success in a show on Cartoon Network. The show would basically consist of 2 teams of 3 people, and they would try to fit in shapes formed in styrofoam walls, and if they failed they would be dumped in a pool. While watching the show for the first time can be fun and entertaining, when you have the same gimmick for every episode, it can get tiring very fast. And that's what happened to Hole in the Wall, as watching 22 minutes of people trying to fit inside holes becomes repetitive and boring. Unnatural History was a drama series that focused on a boy named Henry, who has traveled the world and has learned many skills like martial arts, since his parents are anthropologists. His parents decide that he should live a normal life in America. The show would focus on him trying to adapt to school life, and him and his friends going on wild adventures. Out of all the live-action Cartoon Network shows I've talked about so far, this is the first one that actually received positive reviews, which makes sense since the action scenes and school drama blended into an interesting concept. Speaking of which, like Unnatural History, Tower Prep was also a drama series that focused on a group of teens with special abilities living at an academy without them knowing how they got there. The show will also receive positive reviews and will receive a sizable audience, especially with the female demographic. However, Cartoon Network would cancel the show because of that fact, even though it revived the Powerpuff Girls in 2016 for the exact same reason. Today, Tower Prep still has a sizable cult following, and is remembered fondly by viewers, which I cannot say about any other live-action series from Cartoon Network. Level Up was an attempt for Cartoon Network to attract the gamer audience. It would focus on 4 gamers who must stop World of Warcraft-like monsters from invading the real world. as well as trying to live normal lives as high schoolers. The show will actually have the opposite effect, since many viewers of the show found the portrayal of the gaming community very poorly since it's the cliche gamers are nerds trope. The comedy is also pretty bad as well.
I want to tell you a story. There once was a boy who dreamt of eating corn dogs 3 meals a day.
It also doesn't help that the action sequences and the CGI of the monsters looks cheap. Overall, the show failed to find an audience and was quickly forgotten about. I think it's very fitting for the last show I talked about in this video is also the last live action show to ever air on Cartoon Network as of this video. Anyway, Incredible Crew was a sketch comedy show that was created by Nick Cannon in 2013. Skits tried to go for the LOL random vibe that was very popular in the early 2010s. Sometimes the skits managed to get a chuckle out of me.
You know what sound a T-Rex makes?
But most of the time, the skits were either not funny or gross.
Of course I am. This is new candy deodorant. It's just like what Mom wears, but after I put it on my armpits, I put it in my mouth. Oh.
It also doesn't help that during this time, YouTube was growing in popularity, and a channel called Smosh did a lot of these same types of sketches that were more funny and entertaining, making Incredible Crew stand out even less. But to end on a positive note, some of the cast would move on to do bigger projects, with the most noteworthy being Shamik Morris, who would go on to voice Miles Morales in the Spider-Verse trilogy, so at least that's a good ending to a very dark time for Cartoon Network. I don't blame Cartoon Network for wanting to produce live-action content. With the success Nickelodeon and Disney was having on their shows, it's understandable for CN to try to cash in off that. I do, however, blame the execution of their live-action shows, as most of the time they were either unfunny, outdated, or just cheap knockoffs of other shows airing at that time. Fortunately for Cartoon Network, their reputation will recover thanks in part to original cartoons such as Regular Show, Adventure Time, and Steven Universe, among many others. In 2023, a decade after Seeing Real ended, Cartoon Network's future is in question again, as their studio recently shut down due to Warner Bros.' recent acquisition of Discovery. It's hard to say what the future of Cartoon Network will look like, but hopefully the network will never attempt to do live action again, as cartoons will always be the strength of the channel. Anyway, with that being said, Koopa out.